Welcome to Seed to Script, where the healing journey begins. Imagine a world where seeds of hope sprout into a symphony of relief, where nature's remedy meets up-to-date information. Today, we embark on an extraordinary voyage through the verdant landscapes of Pennsylvania's medical cannabis industry.
In the heart of the Keystone State, our first guest, PhD, not only cultivates cannabis, but nurtures a vision of wellness. We'll unveil the secrets behind the art and science of growing therapeutic cannabis that transcends soil and reaches the soul.
Journeying hand in hand, we also bring you CCC, the Architects of Access. Together, we explore pathways from seed to script, where qualified individuals discover the power of medical cannabis, unlocking a script for a healthier, more vibrant life. I'm your co-host, Brandon Alonzo, your curator of conversations, your guide through the intricate tapestry of cannabis culture, from the seedling's first whisper to the certified script's profound impact. We are joined by the one and only Dr. Brian Donner, founder and your favorite co-host.
Thank you, Brandon. And as we delve into the essence of Seed to Script, anticipate enlightening discussions, captivating stories, and a kaleidoscope of perspectives from the passionate minds shaping the future of medical cannabis in Pennsylvania. So, dear listeners, fasten your seatbelts, inhale deeply, and join us on a magical odyssey through the Seed to Script universe.
Because here, the journey is not just from seed to script, it's a journey from healing to hope. Thank you for joining us today. Let's dive into our inaugural episode of Seed to Script with some introductions. Currently, I have the opportunity to work as a sales and marketing manager at Penn Health Group. My name, again, is Brandon Alonzo. However, I wear many hats at work depending on the day. Today, I'm joined by our head grower, Zach Gropper. Zach, how are you today?
I'm stoked to be here.
Good. We are so glad to have you here. Next up is your favorite co-host, Dr. Brian Donner. Dr. Donner, how was your drive to Uniontown today?
Thanks, Brandon. It was long, but the sun was shining, so I couldn't complain. So it was great. And I have also with us today, let me introduce somebody else from CCC, the one and only Joe Ligori. Joe is our director of patient and employee relations and has been with CCC almost since the beginning. And Joe really has more interactions with patients than anybody else at CCC. So we're lucky to have him with us. Thanks, Joe.
Joe, thanks for joining us.
Hey, you're welcome. Thank you, guys.
Well, I couldn't be more excited to kick off today's episode with all of these awesome guests. I think there's no better place than to start with Act 16, which really is the foundation for our program here in Pennsylvania. I'm going to ask that Dr. Donner, if you wouldn't mind explaining a little bit about the initiation of the medical program here in Pennsylvania and kind of how that got started.
Yeah, absolutely. So whenever we in Pennsylvania initiated the medical-driven program, there was obviously many moving parts. And I think that's one of the things that we hope to discuss on Seed to Script. Our organization, Compassionate Certification Centers, is on one area, and we really act as the gateway to some of the patients. In that we are a physician group that we were now established in 2016, right around the same time as the PA state program. What we do is we serve to help patients and provide a safe and consistent entry point into the Pennsylvania medical cannabis program by not only providing certifications, but also providing ongoing education and support. And once patients come through us, that's really once they will get deeper into the program, obviously. We've been around for a long time. I think we're the largest physician certification group in Pennsylvania. We've been fortunate enough to be involved in over 100,000 patient certification encounters, and we have tens of thousands of patients. So it's been tremendous. And we've also been actively involved in trying to promote regulation and research. So we really come from the physician standpoint and from the patient standpoint. And that's the quick and dirty on CCC.
That's awesome. Thank you, Brian.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So you said it the best. You guys have been around since the beginning. What has allowed you guys to exist and continue to develop as the program has developed and grown?
Yeah, that's a great question. Probably a whole bunch of different factors too. I think the biggest thing has been being there from the beginning. We've developed relationships with not only patients but organizations like PHG and regulators and caregivers, so that we really became immersed more than anything. And one of the things at CCC we've prided ourselves on is that our patients tend to come back and stay with us, right? So that's been a big driving factor for us, and we've been there through the changes in the regulations and with the telemedicine integration, and through the pandemic as well, which was pretty interesting. I'm sure we could talk about that, but from a consistency standpoint, things have been great. And honestly, I tip my hat to Pennsylvania. There's a lot of states that have got this wrong. I think Pennsylvania's done a pretty good job from the start, which is great.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Joe, you have been there since about the start of the inception of CCC as well. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do day to day?
So at CCC, you could come in contact with me from your very first phone call to your appointment to if anything goes wrong throughout the year and you need help. So a little bit of everything. It's a little something different each day, honestly. But the one thing we pride ourselves on too is when a patient calls, they don't have to know anything about anything. We'll help them from the very first step to them getting their card in the mail. So that's the main thing I focus on. Patients getting the care they need, making sure they get their card, and helping with anything that may happen throughout the year.
Absolutely. So I recently actually had the opportunity as a medical patient in Pennsylvania to go through the recertification process with CCC. I have now been a patient for 5 years, going on 6 years. So almost since the beginning of the program. So I've obviously been recertified a couple of times. This was one of probably the better experiences that I've had. Not that any of my experiences necessarily have been negative, but everything was very consistent. They asked the right questions. They made sure that I felt comfortable to proceed with using medical cannabis and going into the dispensary to make those choices. Overall, it was a very seamless process. And I think you guys have really dialed that in for your patients. So obviously one of the things that kind of came out of the pandemic, there were a number of things that kind of came out of that were negative and positive. But I think one of the positive things for our program was the introduction of telehealth. Do you mainly probably see all of your patients as telehealth patients? Do you see any patients in person anymore, or how has that kind of transition for you guys?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you're spot on. The pandemic really changed that landscape, not only in medical cannabis, but all across healthcare, right? The telemedicine became much more prominent. We now currently do both. I would say it's probably weighted 80 to 90% telemedicine, but we also have brick and mortar locations, for folks to come in. You tend to see some of the younger generations that they prefer the telehealth, and then some of the older folks, they like the traditional brick and mortar. But we still offer both options, but primarily I would say it's mostly telehealth.
Awesome. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, no, I mean, it's a good option for people to have, especially with how busy some people get. But I think still having the option, if you want to speak to someone directly, especially older individuals. We've seen an uptick in a lot of older individuals applying for their cards, using them, seeking education about this stuff. So it's hugely important to be that resource for them.
Absolutely, and I think you're right, and it's on both spectrums, the age spectrums, right? Some of the older population, and then the younger population too. Pediatrics need a lot more help. So telemedicine can make things very practical. So for follow-up, somebody has questions, things like that too, right? It makes it a lot easier. They don't have to worry about setting up an appointment, taking 4 hours out of the day to try find parking if it's snowing or 10 degrees outside. So yeah, telemedicine has been a game changer, and I think now the cat's out of the bag, for lack of a better description. I don't think we're going backwards, or hopefully not, So how about from you guys? It's a question to put it back. Did you see any changes with regard to volume or products and everything after telemedicine was integrated? My guess would be yes, but I'd be sort of curious to hear your guess.
Yeah, I would say there was certainly a little bit of uptick in demand. There was an increase in patients a little bit. I think more notably in the program that most of us could probably speak to from both sides is when they started adding certain qualifying conditions. Probably most prominently, we're on the same page here, but when they added anxiety, much needed by all means, was added, there was a huge influx of patients added. And I know at the time, excuse me, as a patient, I would go to the dispensary prior to the anxiety being added, and I could get the same products on Monday that I could get on Friday. And once anxiety was added, the whole market shifted. And there was a huge demand because we probably added, I know, at least 100,000 patients with that particular condition. So it's remarkable that that's happened. And it's been 3-4 years since that was added to the program now, and we've continued to progress. But yeah, we certainly saw a little bit of uptick during the pandemic. I mean, there was an uptick in spending during that period of time, and a number of things. Things have kind of dropped off a little bit, but there's still quite the demand for things, and we've seen still an increase in desire for education and understanding of how to approach this, especially post-pandemic, and a more natural manner for people they wanted to approach things. So yeah, it certainly impacted things.
Yeah, but you're right about the qualifying conditions and those additions really increased volume, and one of the things people don't think about a lot, and I really tip my hat to you guys, is that when we first started, product consistency and availability was an issue, and for people who are potentially naive to medical cannabis and you're just getting started, it can be problematic, right? When you think and look at the progression that we've made since then, that not only the consistency, but the type of products that are available, it's night and day. And I think you guys as your industry has done a great job in sort of following that and also promoting it. Which is a big deal. So I don't mean to get us off the train there, but I think that's been.
I don't think you took us actually too far off the train. Speaking of night and day, though, I don't want to leave our other guest here in the dark, Zach. Zach, you've been with the company for how long now?
Yeah, about 2.5 years or so.
And where'd you join us from?
I came from Las Vegas, so. I grew there for about 5-6 years. Got there before it was even recreational. So was able to build a small mom and pop company up, and we sold to an MSO, and they moved in, and they promised a lot of things and they didn't deliver. But so I could kind of see like the quality go down when we sold out, but the whole time I knew what to do and what not to do. A lot of it is trial and error. But then COVID hit, and there's a travel ban. Our dispensary is right on the Strip in Las Vegas, so you got strip prices. Now you're selling to the locals, and they know better than to pay the extreme convenience fee of anything on the Strip. So we sold to Cookie's dispensary, and I wanted to head east because I'm originally from Atlanta. So I thought this was the next state to flip, and I wanted to be here, before it went rec to see it blow up. But we're still here, and it's still medical, and it's been a pretty big transition.
Yeah, and you actually join us from quite the medical background yourself anyway, though. I mean, you come from a family of doctors. And you decided to kind of make a different decision here.
Yeah.
You want to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I was in pre-med in college. My dad's a brain surgeon. My mom's a nurse anesthetist. My brother's a dentist. Other sister's a nurse. And when I was, studying for the MCAT to go into medical school, there's nothing on there that looks familiar to me. I'm like, I'm not good at this. I know food, and I know health, and I know that food's related to health, and They don't teach any nutrition classes in medical school. Like, what's going on? They got this backwards. Like, they're the drug dealers, you know? So, you know, my dad didn't like that at first, but he's really come around. He's buying all the pot stocks and stuff now. But I think that's where the medicine is where the food is and the herbs are. And, you know, I was studying Chinese medicine, growing mushrooms for a while. And then my mom had bipolar disorder, and she wouldn't take the very medicine that she prescribed. So she didn't want to be numb, but she just couldn't calm down. So I started growing her some Blue Dream in our basement, and she loves it, and she uses it every day. So I try to grow the cleanest medicine that I would serve my mom.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Speaking of specific strains, you guys probably encounter a lot of patients as they approach the program on strain names and how to approach strains and the educational side of approaching products when you walk into a dispensary, which can be extremely overwhelming. Zach mentions Blue Dream, which is probably a better well-known strain. However, I know for us, we have how many genetics do you have in your base, Zach?
We've got about 60 that we're running currently right now. But I mean, in our inventory, there's probably 200 ready to be popped.
And most people, the average person, unlike myself, is not spending hours on Leafly or reading the medical marijuana magazine in front of me or any of these books that are actually sitting in front of me that came from my house. So most people, it's a lot to keep up with. Yeah. How do you, from a certification education perspective, how do you guys, how do you teach a patient to approach the dispenser or to make the right choices for themselves?
Yeah, this is a great question, and this is something that we focused on specifically. So when you look at medical marijuana from a classic medical perspective, it's hard for, I think, a lot of doctors, a lot of clinicians, because that when a medicine's called Blue Dream or Purple Haze, or it's hard because that doesn't bring any significance to your brain in the way you've been trained, right? When I look, to me, it's all about cannabinoid and terpenoid profiles, right? More than anything else. So what we try to focus on, at CCC, is explaining to patients the different cannabinoids that can be present, their different properties, and how they can interact with one another, right? And then based off of the symptoms or disease process that they're going to treat, right? Then we can, I don't want to say design something, but maybe outline a good starting point from a treatment standpoint, right?
Absolutely.
But then there's that key moment of interaction too, is also, as you alluded to, at the dispensary, right? When people are getting that medicine. So the way I look at it, and I tell all my patients this, is we're trying to put some tools in your toolbox so that you understand this and you know how it works, so that when you have the basics, then you're going to be able to build on that, right?
Right.
And it's actually it's a good way. It's individualized medicine, right? And I still, one of the most fascinating things to me is that, and it just proves the endocannabinoid system and the science behind it, is that you can take two people, the exact same, the same age, the same sex, the same basic heritage or genetic profile, and literally you give them medical cannabis and it works fantastic for one person, but it doesn't work great for the other one. And why is that? Well, it's not because of the cannabis or the medicine, it's because of the individual, right? And their own endocannabinoid system and that balance and everything. So, and this is one of the reasons that I'm so excited to be able to talk to you guys to understand that on the ground level, because, look, everybody, yeah, I want to grow marijuana. That's what I want. Nobody wants to be a doctor and do this stuff, or everyone wants to grow it, right? But really, really the art and the science and the finesse and the love that has to go into that, because you guys are creating medicines, right? So Joe and I can't wait for you guys to dive into this stuff. So
the regulations too, like we get tested down to the spore for yeast, mold, like more strict than the food that you eat, because we're selling to immunocompromised individuals. So this isn't, we hire people that, I say, do you have any experience? They're like, am I allowed to tell you? Because, it's been a kind of a black market thing for so long. And the way that they trim is not the way we trim, because all the medicinal molecules like the trichomes and the cannabinoids are on the outside of the plant, so you have to be very gentle. So we take the microscope out, we look at all the trichomes and see how fragile they are. I mean, you just touch them and they'll stick to your finger. They're not on the medicine anymore. So I think it's kind of eye-opening, especially in this industry, just, under the magnifying glass.
Yeah, we approach everything from a very educational standpoint. I'm very adamant about that. And I think our company as a whole, everyone from the top the whole way to the bottom, is about education. And I think with cannabis, the more you understand, the better decisions you can make. One of the best examples I can give is, as a patient, I struggle with anxiety and I struggle with PTSD and I struggle with chronic pain. Those are all very different things to treat a lot of times. And so when I first started going to the dispensary, it would become a little bit frustrating. And I know you've heard this, is I bought this product, I spent X amount of money on this product, and I left with so much anxiety. Over time, what I came to learn through this process was, and I started journaling what terpenes and what the cannabinoid concentrations were in these products. So for example, when I'm treating some of my PTSD symptoms, I love certain sativa strains. They match my mind at the speed that it's moving and it slows everything down. However, there are some strains that are sativa strains that just send me through the roof. And it was really dialing in what that looked like from an educational standpoint. So for me, very individualistically, I know terpinolene, a very invigorating, uplifting type of terpene, does well for me. However, if I join that with large concentrations of pinene, we have a whole issue.
It's too much.
But whereas some people absolutely love pinene for that focus. So, for example, my partner, who is also a medical patient and treats a couple different conditions as well, loves pinene to help with his ADD, ADHD. But I, on the other hand, touch any of it and I'm crawling out of my skin. And that's why I think as a medical organization, especially a medical company like Zach put in frame, when we work with immunocompromised individuals or whoever the end patient is, it's so important for them to understand, one, that their medicine's being taken care of, but two, what's going into it and what makes up your medicine so that you can better treat yourself, especially from something that's not consistent because it's an organic product. And I think that's probably even more difficult to approach from our side, but you guys probably get that question a lot, is how do I go to the dispensary and I can't find the same thing every time because now that blue dream's not growing anymore. So what do I do?
Yeah.
And how do you answer that for patients?
Yeah, and this honestly, I fall back on the cannabinoid profile again. Okay, what have you been using before in the past? Let's take a look. Let's examine this component by component. So if we don't have that per se, we have something similar: a brother, a sister, a cousin, that type of thing, right?
Right.
And we'll honestly, there times we'll go through the products with the patients and say,
Right.
Because as you guys know, sometimes it's a little bit of a crapshoot when you show up at the dispensary. You don't
Right.
know who you're gonna, and this is true in everywhere. It's just like when you show up at a restaurant, and you don't know if your waiter's gonna be good, bad, or in between, right?
Right.
So it's the same thing. So yeah, so what I try to do is always fall back on the cannabinoid and terpenoid profile. And here's here's what these tend to do. Here's what works for you in the ratio, and then we literally just take it from there.
Yeah.
And I think what you hit on, to me, is the key thing in medical cannabis, is that we're giving the patients the tools, right? So much of modern medicine is jamming a square peg in a round hole, for lack of a better term, right?
And it's
yeah, right. Me, doctor, tell you what to do.
Right.
That's
Right.
it. And that works in certain cases, right? But as we all know, it doesn't work really well in other cases. And I think cannabis, because of its safety profile on a biochemical level, is literally one of the perfect things that you can do this with, right? And it's a very empowering thing that when you have the ability to sort of start to fix yourself, right? Like that in it, that's what we're going for, you know? So, and it's one of those things. And I know, it's some people always talk about too. I always get a lot from folks. Oh yeah, you guys think medical marijuana fixes everything. And it's like, well, not everything, but a lot of things, right? And when you look at the science behind it and how the endocannabinoid system works, you can start to understand why, right?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So let me ask you guys a question.
Yeah, please.
How, when you decide on a product that you're going to implement or that you're going to design,
Please.
how do you go through that process? Is it based on certain disease entities? Would it be based on more of a need that's out there that you see?
Absolutely.
Or what's your process?
So let me give you a few examples. There's probably about 3 different situations we approach as a company. One, we pride ourselves on patient feedback, first and foremost. So obviously we've been growing now for 5-6 years. Our company has been around since 2016 and then started actively producing in 2018. Once we were awarded the license and everything was operational. But the biggest product decision feedback honestly comes from patients. Prime example. Most recently, I have had several customers reach out requesting our Jack Harrow live sauce in both, we offer it in a live sauce syringe or applicator and also in live resin carts. And we keep track of that. It happens to be biasedly one of my favorite strains, so I'm more likely to push that product, but most recently, I did just go back to the lab a few days ago and I was like, look, I've had a number of patients asking for this product. Let's roll it. So first and foremost, patient response. We always take feedback. That was one example. I've had the same situation. We were at CannaFest a couple years ago. I had a patient requesting specifically the Jack Harrow RSO at the time. Went back to the lab, had them run some batches. Jack Harrow happens to be one of our probably most popular strains just simply because it's so well known. And ours has such a robust terpene profile with high levels of terpinolene. Actually, if we're going to call it out, and I will, that seed is actually from where, Zach?
Can I say?
Yeah.
Yeah, from you got to trust where you get your seeds from, and you got to trust that they're stable genetics. We have a consultant that knows Jorge Cervantes in Spain, and actually got one of the seeds off of him. So, I mean, that's huge. He's like the godfather.
It's very well known, and he's also very educationally driven, and also one of those people that shares that education freely. Not that he's much of a web presence, I know, but he or his associates has a LinkedIn, and he just released his updated growing edition on some education and stuff. He seems pretty cool.
Yeah.
So that's probably our first approach for products. Not our only approach, obviously. The second approach, and probably the more important approach, which sculpted a lot of our original strain selection and how we select strains moving forward, is kind of based on a map, for lack of best explanation. So we offer an array of products, and then within those product categories, I try to offer certain terpene profiles within them. So obviously, most commonly, we refer to a lot of this as sativa hybrid indica, which is fine at a base level of education and understanding. It's absolutely perfect for people to make those quick associations. But as we dive into that further, we learn that the terpene profiles are really what guide those experiences. So for example, speaking back to sativa strains, I had mentioned for me, a terpinolene dominant sativa strain is fantastic. However, certain high limonene sativa strains end up being quite the opposite for me. They end up being agitating. If anything. And that's just something that I've come to learn over time. But each sativa, hybrid, indica have essentially different terpene profiles that fit within them. There's different terpenes that we use to treat certain things. So when we select, we try to fit within those terpene profiles because we recognize that they treat certain conditions. So when we run a room or a grow room, which we'll definitely get into more eventually, but we try to make sure we're matching those profiles as much as possible. Now we're limited with obviously the space that we're growing in, so we have multiple grow rooms going, but we do try to offer different varieties of options based on terpene profile. Now that's obviously more specific to like strains and cultivars and things like that. So there is yet again, obviously a third driving factor for products. And it's kind of a combination of all of those things put together. So we've seen a lot of advancements and focus on cannabinoids in Pennsylvania and even abroad as we've come to learn more about them. And we see, as you said, more patients asking for more specific things because they know what's working for them. They have been empowered to make these medical choices for themselves now. And they're like, hey, this works. If you guys could create a product for us that is highlighted in this manner, we would use it. So it's patient feedback, but it's also looking at the market and the science. So if I could, I'd speak to probably our most recent product development we just went through is the release of our medical marijuana syrups. So this was a huge thing for us as a small independent company to one, both get it approved and for two, to be as successful for patients as it is. So with the medical marijuana syrup line, it introduces essentially 4 different formulations with a total of 5 SKUs. So I want to speak to that for a minute, but we offer a chill formula, which is a 500 milligram THC formula designed for obviously pain. The syrup line itself comes out of a desire for a non-vaporizable option patients are asking for. In response to that, it's really been a need, and also from 2 outlying ends of populations, also to assist pediatrics. It was a strong desire to provide a medication that is easy to dose, unlike some other things in the industry. For example, big advocate of RSO when it can be used, but it's not the most dosable item, especially if you're trying to dose a child. They're not going to consume this thick, viscous liquid, and you got to put it. I consume mine on Reese's peanut butter cup. So like that's hard to get that and get the same consistent dose every time. Absolutely. So this is where this came from. And these syrups are provided to patients with a dosing cup. So they have that ease to look at it and know I can get 2 milligrams, I can get 5 milligrams, up to the medicine cup is 15 mil. So it can provide them up to 30 milligrams with the chill formulation. The other formulations originally planned for this line included our day formula, which we just released, is a 1-to-1 CBG formula. So there's been a lot of research about CBG recently, but the surrounding drive or goal for that specific product within this line was to help with gastrointestinal issues. There's a lot of research association of using CBG and helping with gastrointestinal issues. And that product's been in the market for about 2 weeks now. I was just at a dispensary the other day, stopping in for myself, and the bud tender stopped me and said, I bought this as soon as it hit the market. She said, I have Crohn's disease. She said, I've been using it for the past 3 days. It's a fantastic product. That's 100% why we do this, is to help those people. So to speak a little bit more to that, there's 2 other products in that line. There's a clear formula, which is coming to be released around Valentine's Day, pending when this episode comes out. It'll probably be after the fact. But that's a 1-to-1 CBD. And then we also have a night version, which has been pretty successful as well. It's a 1-to-1 CBN. which for someone like myself, so I struggle to stay asleep because of my PTSD. I'll have all kinds of crazy nightmares. So this has been assisting myself. But we've had a lot of people request some type of ingestible or something that is longer lasting to help them stay asleep. Now, obviously, some people have to redose your body chemistry, Joe's body chemistry. Obviously, Zach's is way different than mine. So that allows for people to take different dose sizes with that. I did say, though, weirdly enough, so the line was created with those 4 original products, but now it includes 5 SKUs. And the 5th SKU, which was already existing, is an extension of the first product. So we have the 500 milligram version, and then patients said, this is great. We want a stronger one. And we said, okay, we can do that for you. We didn't realize that's what you wanted, and we'll do it. So we acted on that very quickly and received approval through the Department of Health, and now produce what we call Chilled Plus is our 1,000 milligram option. So it provides double the potency or double the THC of the original formula. A little bit more pricey, but does help with more pain and things like that. But that was born from, again, patients asking for it. And that's where a lot of things come from. I'm going to be honest. I don't have our board or our CEOs calling me going, hey, I just saw this. You guys should be making this product. It's all born from concept within the people I work with. And I think I'll even let Zach speak to an extension of that. Some of the people we work with are obviously patients. Yeah. And it's making up words. It produced a desire for us to start growing certain strains that weren't available for patients. So, for example, most recently, Zach, we harvested a lavender 1-to-1 plant because we've seen a desire and uptick for patients wanting CBD at the dispensary. Obviously, you can buy it from other sources, but I know people have wanted it in both extracts form and in flower. So we've introduced these strains from particular employees that we work with that are also patients. So that was one of those examples. And I think there's probably several more recently that have been born from that. I don't know if you want to talk about that, but we do pick these strains based on their conditions as well and what helps them as patients. Because at the end of the day, that's what it's about, is taking care of the patients. And yes, they work for us and they impact things, but they're using it and they're empowered for a reason to want these strains. So if they fit into our goal of helping patients, then by all means. And I think that's where a couple of them have come from.
Yeah, and Jack, I'm curious to hear more too. To me, this is so amazing because where else in medicine? I mean, think about what happens for a drug development and a process and the years and years and years. But yet, here's what you guys are doing, literally on an individual level. You're listening to the patients and trying to create something of need, right? Like that is it's super powerful, and just I don't think people appreciate that much, right? So, and to everybody who's listening, this applies to you too. It's not like the people giving feedback or right. It's everybody. So.
And I don't think everybody understands. This is different than a lot of other plants or medicines. This can be an indica or a sativa, an upper or a downer. You know what I mean? And it can be either one. The genetic diversity in this plant. I mean, we get lemon, skunk, there's some that smell like, meat and onions and garlic, and you know what I mean? There's a umami category. It's just it's endless, and the breeding that goes into it. I mean, you can really get new strains out of, 2 completely different strains. You get a whole new cultivar just crossing those. So, I mean, the sky's the limit with it, I think. And like, we have the THCV now in one of our Starry Night strains that apparently helps you with appetite. I thought, this made you hungry and gave you the munchies, but now there's a compound that can reduce your appetite.
That's a really good call out. That Starry Night had almost 12% THCV. It was an extract. I know people are also using it for focus as well. But that was another very wonderful
weight loss,
It was a good medical strain, but people are looking for those. based on those because they're like, look, I know what this can do for me, and I'm empowered to make that decision.
And it's breaking all the stereotypes too. The more we figure out and learn about the plant.
And all of us in the industry too, I think as time goes on, we need to get better at sharing information, right? Because that's one of the things about cannabis, and it's because of the regulatory, body on the federal level, but it ends up being really fragmented, right? So what you guys are finding out here could be very similar to what they're finding in California or somewhere else, but it's not that open lines of communication, and then it's not really there yet, right? And I think it's probably the same for you guys, but being a cannabis physician, there's no part of medical school for that. There's no specific education, right? And when you want to be a grower or you want to do, there's a lot of this stuff that we all take it on ourselves to educate, right? It's not, we're not given a cookbook. Here's how it is. Here's the regs and guidelines to follow. And oftentimes you have to be comfortable with living in the gray between the black and white, right? Because you're never getting those answers. So I think it's super cool. Does the state put any requirements on you guys for the types of products? Like, hey, listen, you have to put out this type of an ingestible or a topical, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot either. I'm just more curious how the state goes about it.
Yeah,
do you want to speak first? Go ahead.
No, even all the way down to the packaging, trying to make sure it's not appealing to kids. And we can't even call the strains what they're called because, some of them have food like names. So, I feel like, we try to keep our integrity, but, at some point the state's like, no, you got to switch it up. Like, you got to stay in your lane.
Yeah. And I think that's taking a step back. I think that's something that a lot of patients don't realize is how heavily regulated it really is. They can easily look at the cameras within our building if they want. We have camera footage. If they request it, we can send it to them. As far as specific products, within Pennsylvania, we're certainly confined to what's approved as far as medicine. So let's speak about that for a minute. Pennsylvania does something that's weird that not every state does, is that we are a vaporization only state, which is just wild to a lot of people. They don't understand it. A lot of people that have been using cannabis prior to its medical status here in Pennsylvania have been smoking it. And that's not an option per se. So everything that we have in Pennsylvania is designed to be vaporized, including flower in question. So when you go to the dispensary, you're not going to be able to buy a bowl or a pipe or a bong. You're going to, or papers. You're going to be buying a Penn battery or a vaporizer of some kind, like the Pax or the Mighty or the Da Vinci, something like that. Some type of device, something like that to vaporize it. But within Pennsylvania, there were certainly some confines of what we had to follow. We're not required to produce anything per se. So not required to be like, you have to make a tincture, a topical, and whatever to be medical. They do allow us the freedom to present the products that we think are best that represent us. So, for example, in Pennsylvania, like I said, there are certain products we can have. So we have RSO, which I spoke to earlier. It stands for Rick Simpson oil. It's probably one of the more medically used products in the field and more commonly used for a lot of medical ailments because of its potency and the cannabinoid overall potency of the cannabinoids, not just the THC levels, but it really packs in the whole plant material. So there's a lot of benefit from that. We also have topicals, so you can see lotions, things like that. We currently don't produce a topical, but we are exploring that category in the future. There's vape cartridges, there's dry flower, there's the concentrates, which I spoke to, so it's extracted material. And that can be both fresh frozen material and dry. So with fresh frozen, you're more likely to get a higher terpene and cannabinoid profile versus a cured product is a little bit lower and your effects don't last quite as long. So there's definitely medical uses for both specific products depending how you're treating yourself. We also offer flower concentrate. In a lot of other states, it's called moon rocks or caviar. Our intended purpose for using this and prying it for patients, while at first does appear very recreational, allows patients to consume less of a product that is more potent than regular dry flower. So if you are having severe pain or something like this, it is applicable to use in those senses. And then beyond that, we also offer, like we said, a medical marijuana syrup, and that's a very new category. I think in Pennsylvania alone for us, we don't have edibles approved per se in Pennsylvania. We have ingestibles, politics, if you will, which Zach spoke to. So where the regulations really impact us as far as what they control and can't control is when it comes to designs and how we present ourselves and the education and the strain names even. And it proves to be very difficult, which I started to speak to a little bit earlier. And I think that that's why it's so important to have an understanding of terpenes and cannabinoids and the science behind it, because unfortunately we have to rename certain things. So for example, one of our favorite strains right now happens to be Dream Cookies. I can't refer to it in Pennsylvania as cookies because cookies is by definition appealing to children. So I can understand that, but it has proved difficulty when you are making decisions in the dispensary setting, because now I have to provide a new name for that. So it can be either renamed. Some growers will remove vowels from the letter, so it becomes a smaller word, and gets approval that way. For us, we remove most of the word from cookies. So on our label, it just says Dream C. A lot of patients understand now in Pennsylvania that you can't have cake or cookie strains. And a lot of strains are named for such. So it is really a disservice to patients. And I think a lot of growers, and I would say even from your side, it proves to make things difficult, because if I know when I was younger before the program, I really liked Blue Dream, but in the program, it's not called Blue Dream. How do I find it?
Oh my God, yeah, it's borderline impossible. So no, I agree with you, and I understand from a regulatory standpoint. You can understand, where they're coming from, and I don't think they oftentimes see how problematic that is on the ground level, right either for that. So. But no, thanks for explaining that. That's something I'm always curious about, because it's interesting. Our two groups sit here together. We're intimately involved in the same state, the same medical marijuana program. We have the same patients and things like that. But yet we're not regulated by the state like you guys are, right? So it's again, it makes it hard sometimes to follow the rules when the rules aren't super clear, right?
Well, it is. Yeah. It's very difficult. I mean, so. Sales, one half of my job, the other half marketing. Marketing, a lot of times, they can both be proved to be very difficult. But marketing sometimes is very difficult for that reason, because I have to work around certain things. And I, don't get me wrong, absolutely understand the rationale and reasoning for why they've approached things in this manner. But it does prove to make things a little bit difficult. But
yeah,
but I think that's why I think both of our organizations see education as such a pivotal, empowering thing to drive people forward in their journeys.
Yeah, absolutely. And from my perspective too, I have to say, the Department of Health has been responsive to us. We've been able to work with them. From a regulatory standpoint, I know things have been open. So it's no doubt that the effort's there, right? Which is good. And we won't get it right the first time.
Has any state gotten it right?
No, I mean. It's probably going to be, what is getting it right? Do we even have that, definition? I think Pennsylvania did pretty darn good when you look at how things could go and some of the disasters that we've all seen, right? And you can see that, I think, with the program participation, So that's great. I had a question for you guys, and it completely just popped out of my mind. It'll come back. I'm not going anywhere.
Well, yeah, I think Pennsylvania's done a good job, but we're surrounded. We're in shark-infested waters. I mean, the black market, why not drive across the state line and, it's all wreck over there. Here you have to have a license. It's, it's almost inviting that, to the state, and it's not really going to hold for much longer. I don't think.
Yeah, no, and that's one of our biggest concerns all the time. That when adult use or recreational comes in, that it, for lack of a better description, bastardize the medical program, right? And no matter whether you are for or against recreational, the patients on the medical side have to always come first, right? No matter what. So, and I just hope whenever we do cross that threshold, that as a state we keep that in mind. I know you guys feel the same way as we do as well. So, and to all the patients out there, just know that we're all thinking about you too, right? That it's not, we don't sit here and just wait for the clock ticking like for rec.
No, not at all.
We more worry about the patients. So what's going to happen?
No, and it definitely. I mean, it's a concern. I was talking about it today in the office. To be honest with you, was what that looks like and how it's happened in other states and how it's transitioned and what that rollout looks like to not leave the medical cannabis patient behind. Not to say that I would not be excited for adult use. I would very much so welcome that. But at the same breath, I adamantly believe that almost all cannabis use is medical. It has a positive impact for the most part. So when that time comes to allow people to make that decision in Pennsylvania freely, I think we'll certainly welcome it, but we definitely cannot forget the past 8+ years of medical patients that have built this program for us. I mean, as a patient myself and someone that works in the industry, I see both sides of it. So I'm in a very fortunate place, but holy cow, we have come a long way. I mean, when I started in the program, you would spend $65 to $75 on an eighth of weed, like mind blowing. And now it can easily go in there's sales. There's regular opportunity to buy product at a less expensive price, allowing patients to treat themselves the way that they truly see fit, which is empowering as well. The program has really progressed, I think, to pay attention to patients. And I think that's one of the things, I mean, there's a lot of things I think I've been fortunate to do in my career. One of the things I pride myself most on, and there's a lot of people that probably don't feel the same way as I do about it, but I'm very proud that for us as an organization, we were really able to drop a lot of our prices, especially particularly with concentrates in the market. And we're the first to do it. And my goal with that was to stick it to other companies. I knew we could make money. It wasn't about making money. It was about taking care of the patient. And we were one of the first to do it. And there's people who followed suit. We have other GPs that definitely caught on to that in the state. But at the end of the day, I couldn't stand across from a patient and say, I'm going to charge you twice that because I pay the same thing. I use our products. And that's what it really comes down to at the end of the day is I'm not just collecting a paycheck. I use our products. I mean, Zach uses our products. And that's what it comes down to is I want a quality, clean product that I can stand behind. And that still takes care of the medical patient at the end of the day. So, yeah. I mean,
and the patients can access, right? I mean, that's the biggest thing. If you have this fantastic medication, but people aren't able to get it, it's not cost effective, whatever it may be, then it doesn't matter, right? Mm-hmm. And I remember at the beginning, again, that was a big problem, and especially when we come from a healthcare system where a lot of things are taken care of and given to us, right? And it's when you're used to like getting your medicine or your medicine costs $2 or whatever it is, it's hard when you got to all of a sudden go and I'm paying $50, $100, whatever it may be. Right. So I think you guys have done an excellent job on that. And honestly, because that's all we do is see patients, and that's really not a problem anymore. Access to products isn't an issue, I don't think, in Pennsylvania. And Pennsylvania's even started to do some things to help subsidize, right?
Right.
So
absolutely,
that's good. That's really.
I think we'll probably dive into more of that in future episodes. But the market's changing, and I mean we're not at adult use yet, but the playing field's been made more level recently. SB 773 has allowed for independent growers and independent dispensaries to have a quality to the rest of the playing field. So essentially we can have dispensaries, and the dispensaries that are independent can have grows now. So we'll definitely have to save that for a future episode. It's wildly interesting, and it's something that we're, as a Pennsylvania-based company, I mean, we're Commonwealth committed. We're not going anywhere. We're not going to another state. We're here for the long run, and it's about being a part of the community and taking care of the people that are here at the end of the day. So we're certainly looking forward to a lot of those things, but yeah, there's definitely some good stuff to come.
Yeah, and I think having our own dispensary, you talk about price, like we can't really control price if we don't own our own dispensary,
Yeah, we definitely have some things up our sleeves when we get into some retail, but again, it's just all about taking care of the patient.
Yeah.
And I think that some people lose sight of that in this industry, and there's a lot of potential, like Zach said. This is a crazy plant, what you can do with it. It's just astounding. And I mean, I sit up here and I praise the plant all day long, but don't get me wrong, like it definitely doesn't fix everything, and I recognize that.
No, and we'll do an episode on that too. I actually have a great article that we can review, and it was sort of the flip side of that of, hey, some of the bad things that cannabis can cause too. But as always, the truth lies somewhere in the middle, right? So yeah, that'll be a good episode. We'll do that. Yeah,
and I think it's also good at lessening the side effects of other medications. That's just a huge thing.
Yeah. And that's what I mean. Originally, that's where a lot of people recognized the medicinal value for the plant was, I am struggling with nausea from my chemo meds, or I am getting headaches from my medication as a side effect, and this helps.
100%.
And I think that's awesome. I can't wait to delve into that episode because I definitely have some personal experience with that myself.
For sure. But, the opiate, with the opiate replacement or alternative therapy is a big deal and was a big deal, right? So, yeah.
Especially here in PA. I mean, don't get me wrong, I have my gripes and complaints about things that could be improved, but overall, I have to be honest with you, I really have to shout out some of the things that we've done well as a program in Pennsylvania. I mean, look, we've come this far. Accessibility, like you said, is a lot better than it used to be. They have their eyes on making things more accessible. Not only that, but I think one of the cool things Pennsylvania did that no one else has done is the research side of it. And I mean, that's a whole episode within itself that we'll definitely have to get into down the road. But Pennsylvania, unlike a lot of other states, when they set up Act 16, the medical legislation for the program, decided that there would be growers and hospitals or medical license centers participating in research, which it's not happening in a lot of other states where medical programs exist. And now our medical centers, UPMC, I can't even think of all the other places, Jefferson, there's so many different CR license linked up in Pennsylvania that are doing research now.
Absolutely. Where I went to medical school at LECOM there, they are linked there too. And you're exactly right. And I've been a big clinical researcher and investigator my whole life, and that is so important. And because of the restrictions on a federal level, right? Research doesn't get done like it should. And the fact that the state took the initiation to do it, and you linked up with the folks who can initiate it, right, and are experts in it, that's a big deal. And you're right, that's a whole another episode too. And I'm a big research guy. That's actually something at CCC that we've participated in ourselves. And even I think it was after the first year of the program, we did it was pretty neat. We did a retrospective data analysis we just talked to patients, right, and got their perspective and everything. So, and did a white paper on it. So I'll have to send it to you guys to read. But I'm a big research guy, and you hit the nail on the head. Pennsylvania, like, they got that right.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm really excited to see what's produced from those studies. I mean, cannabis is definitely, we're approaching this podcast at the right time. It's at the forefront of so many discussions right now, and should it be descheduled? Do we give people a right to grow? What's going on? We're going to legalize adult use in Pennsylvania. Ohio just went adult use. So there's so much going on and being talked about from every different perspective. I can't wait to dive into this more. And what I'm really excited about is to hear what our followers want to learn more about. Because as I think one of our greatest disparities, despite the successes in Pennsylvania, is not only just in Pennsylvania, but as a country, we've really failed people to show them where their medicine comes from. And there certainly are restrictions around what we can and cannot show to people. But it's a little bit of a disservice to be like, here's where your medicine's grown. And a lot of that we aren't able to share with patients, which is unfortunate. And we do our best to kind of show a lot of that off. But Pennsylvania does a great job at, I think, listening to what patients are saying and eventually applying them. I mean, anything that's bureaucratic, political takes time, but they are listening. I mean, they just added a new qualifying condition at the board meeting the other day, traumatic brain injury. Fantastic, much needed to be added. So they're listening. We've added new products. Like I said, we offer medical marijuana syrup. There's now troches in Pennsylvania. So there's another ingestible option for patients that don't want to vaporize or don't want to use a tincture. The expanse of where we come in 8 years is amazing. I can't wait to hear what patients want to learn about. And this is really where this has been born from. This podcast is, let's talk about it then.
Yeah. And I'm going to tell you, like, this is a perfect thing. I wasn't even aware of TBI being added, right? And so this is how we find out and we have these discussions there. But that is, I helped run our concussion clinic at one of the hospitals for about 3 years. And I was one of the only docs that would use medical cannabis, I would say pretty aggressively. And I will tell you what, I had more luck with that in treating post-concussion symptoms than I did with any of the prescribed medications and everything, right? So stuff like this is a really big deal, and like spreading the word.
Right.
Yeah. So no, that's good. Thanks for letting me know, man.
Yeah. I mean, thank God we pay attention to the advisory board meetings. So, but I mean, that's another point is there are regular meetings for things that are updated that we pay attention to, and it's obviously to our benefit. But yeah, that was one of the recent additions. Definitely excited to see that they are constantly paying attention to things and updating things. It's a little bit slower, but that's why I'm so pumped to sit here, and I can't wait to see what comes from this podcast. I mean, we've been talking about bringing this to light for months, and the possibilities with this are certainly endless. I can't wait to have some patients on to hear what they have to say and what their questions are, and really, really get our feet wet in this.
Yeah, I agree. And well said. That's what we want to hear from everybody listening. Like, what do you want to ask? What do you want to know? And boy, there's a lot of paths we could take. So.
Yeah, I mean, 8 years of program, and we're only continuing to grow. And with more and more patients, it's certainly become crazy. I don't want to keep us here all night because I don't want to keep you guys from your families,
Anything else you want to tell everybody about what you guys do? If there's anything you didn't say or we didn't talk about, that type of thing, obviously we're going to be backing up plenty of time, but anything important you think that we missed?
Go for it, Zach.
I mean, I just, I wish we could take you to the facility and show you the love that goes into these plants and the people behind it. We're like a group of misfits. We got people from the health field, the hospitals, and then we get people from the restaurants and the bars. So, we get a lot of people that are very passionate about it. And, some people do take pay cuts just to get in the industry and see what it's about. And then they just fall in love with it like it's a hobby, and you feel good at the end of the day because you're making a difference and it's something very tangible. And to get the feedback from the patients, that's, what gets you up in the morning, you know what I mean? And everybody thinks about the plants, it's like, it takes a village to raise those plants, and they require daily care. And even when we're trimming them, everything's by hand. There's no machines involved. and it's a lot, and people get carpal tunnel from trimming, but they're going to rub on their CBD and THC cream and stuff like that, and they're self-medicate, and everybody's just all in on it, and it's a lifestyle, and I don't know if a lot of people even see that side of this,
No, definitely not. I mean, and you don't really realize what the industry's like until you get into it, but the one thing I wish I could like leave people with is, it's a very difficult day in and day out. There's a lot of chaos. There's a lot of changes. There's constantly updates from the Department of Health. Certain regulations change, certain packaging changes, and then it opens a whole new door for things. So it's very chaotic, but it's very enjoyable, and that I love that I get to do something different at all times. But I selfishly love what I do because I love when I walk into somewhere and they tell me about how a product we made helps them. And that's what we make some really great flower and it has some awesome terpenes, and like you're pumped that you just got your hands on the Tangerine Haze or the Acapulco Gold or the Thai stick that's dropping soon. Like you got one of those and that's great, but the individual who shared with me like, hey, this CBG syrup has been awesome for my Crohn's is a paycheck in itself. And that probably sounds like words that transfer across the microphone, but honestly, like that's why we all get into this. And I'm sure at some point we'll all share stories about different occurrences of helping different individuals. I mean, that's why we do this. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love when I'm able to help someone, empower them to make a choice for themselves and feel better about it. Yeah. And I'm sure you guys feel the same way.
I do. I tell everybody all the time, and I've been a pretty traditional physician, and from a research standpoint and everything, and cannabis has sort of changed the way I think about being a doctor, right? And it's really a pretty profound thing, and then when you get people together like we're doing, that's when it gets pretty fun, Right. One thing cannabis does is it brings a really interesting groups of people always together, right? So, and it's that's actually a really big net positive, right. I think. That's whenever the good stuff happens. So
I could not agree with that more. One of the things I used to say when I started was, and a lot of people didn't like this, was I adamantly believe that to be successful, cannabis is collaboration. Cannabis is communication. It's an environment within itself of a certain culture. And when those collaborations happen is when you really get some magic.
Exactly. And that's what medicine is, honestly. You know what I mean? It's communication. And whether it's you or your provider, yourself and your body, right? It's all sort of along those lines. So I can tell you, we appreciate you guys. That's for sure. And think you guys do amazing stuff. So I think it's awesome. This is our first episode. There's going to be good stuff in the pipeline.
Yeah. Joe, is there anything you want to leave the patients with the listeners?
So, just for anyone out there new thinking about diving in, this all seems very overwhelming. Just know there's people to help you every step along the way. From where us getting your card to the dispensaries, all the way to where it's getting grown. Just know there's someone to help you every step of the way.
Well said. Yeah. It can be very overwhelming to approach, I think.
It can. And I want to add too, don't let the financial restrictions be the reason that you don't do it, right?
Right.
We probably have much more flexibility, right? But we help people all the time, right? And there's programs out there to help people, and there's caregivers, and just because you can't get to the dispensary or you've never done this before or you're not sure you can afford it, don't let that be the thing that holds you back from your wellness or you getting better, right? To at least try.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We'll find a way.
Well said. Yeah, well said. And I think we'll even touch on that probably in future episodes. There is part of the Pennsylvania program is designed to provide support for patients as well. So we'll definitely get into that in the future. As we wrap up, I want to take a moment first to shout out our amazing studio that we're in tonight. I've never, this is my first podcast. I sound like an absolute professional well, hopefully, I don't know. We'll see once it gets mixed out, but mad shout out to Still Crazy Studios in Uniontown, PA. Absolutely awesome, out of this world place. They have a beautiful recording space downstairs. I also want to shout out our awesome ZY Productions videography, lighting. He has made this room look like a dream. And speaking of, in future episodes, I'm going to need your guys' help to figure out what our little co-host name is back here. So we got our podcast pot plant back here. And I'm sure he's going to have a name in the future. Well, she'll have a name in the future. Excuse me. She will have a name in the future. So we'll definitely be looking for feedback on that. But Zach has done an awesome job making sure that we all look good and everyone is illuminated. Hopefully my pores look okay. I didn't look in the mirror today before all of this. But they have made this such an awesome process. So I want to give a definite shout out to them. And they're going to be making this this whole podcast series quite the awesome thing. So I want to give a shout out to them. We're not quite successful enough to have our own Instagram yet. It's going to be coming. We're going to have our own socials in the future. But in the meantime, Brian, where can people find you guys?
Well, yeah, you can at cccenters.org. It's pretty straightforward. So it's CCC, like Compassionate Certification Centers.org. All the information you need there.
Perfect. And on Instagram, you can find them on Instagram. Look them up. You can find us on our website. You type in Penn Health Group, it'll definitely pop up. You can find us on Instagram. We're on Facebook. We try to be, as like I said, as communicative as possible with patients. Great place to reach out to us. We try to respond to people as much as possible. You can find us there. Like I said, in the future, we'll keep you guys posted. We're definitely going to try and put together a platform. You can reach directly out to us for the Seed to Script podcast. So we're definitely looking forward to that in the future. Zach, thank you for joining us today.
No, thanks for having me on the podcast. I had to make that joke before we leave.
I figured you'd get at least one pun in before the end of the episode. Joe, thank you for making the drive down.
Yeah, thank you guys. This was a good experience, and I learned a bunch just from listening to you guys talk too. So,
Brian, thank you for making me look like the bad podcast host.
Thank you.
You have like the perfect podcast voice and comfortable, relaxed over there.
I don't have the perfect podcast face, that's for sure. So I'll take the voice. So, but no, thank you, Brett. I think you did excellent. And yes, I want to echo the thanks on the studio and production side. Just absolutely amazing. I've been blown away and really appreciate everything. So thank you all.
And I want to take one more moment to shout out someone else special here today with us. Sarah, who's hanging out off stage, has been helping with production and making this thing really come to life. So I definitely want to give a shout out to Sarah over there. She's really been making all this magic come together and bringing us all into one place. So definite shout out to Sarah. Thank you. All right. So we're going to kind of wrap things up for you. I'll let Dr. Donner take it.
And there you have it, dear listeners, a glimpse into the fascinating world of Seed to Script. We hope this episode has been a seed of inspiration, sparking curiosity and enlightenment as we explored the intersection of cultivation and certification in Pennsylvania's medical cannabis landscape. As we prepare to conclude today's episode, we want to express our gratitude to our listeners and our guests for sharing their wisdom and passion. Your stories have planted seeds of understanding and shown the promise of a healthier tomorrow.
Fear not, though. This isn't farewell. It's just a brief pause, and join us for our next episode, where we'll continue our journey through the ever-evolving script of medical cannabis in Pennsylvania. We'll unearth more tales, explore patient journeys, and uncover the latest innovations that cultivate healing in our communities. Again, I want to take a moment to thank Zach and Marcus and Christian and Sarah for joining us today and making this all happen. And remember, from seed to script, the journey is not just a progression, it's a rhythm, a dance, a symphony of possibilities. Thank you for joining us on this episode, and we look forward to welcoming you back as we sow more seeds in the episodes to come. Until next time, be well and be kind.